Hi, I'm Coach Amber, and welcome to the Meet RX Success Story podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Kelly Hogan. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thanks for having me, Amber.
Absolutely excited to hear your success story. Not that I haven't heard it before, but it's such a great one. Anyway, so let's get started. The first question I want to ask you is, what was your health like prior to starting a meat-based diet? Were you having any health issues? What made you want to go carnivore?
I definitely was. So I was only in my 20s, but I had been rather heavy set my entire life. Even in like elementary school and middle school, I was one of the bigger kids in the class. I was very tall, but I was also just a big kid. And my dad had struggled with his weight my whole life, but my mom, oh my gosh, I wish I had a picture to show people. I'm talking like movie star, perfect figure. And my brother was very thin. He's a younger brother, but he was always super thin. So we had my mom and my brother and me and my dad, and we were both the big ones. We were the heavy ones. And people would always say, "Oh, she looks so much like her daddy." And I was like, "Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know." No chubby girl wants to hear that she looks like her chubby daddy. It just wasn't what I wanted to hear. So that was just my childhood. And then in high school, I had such drive that I really wanted to be pretty. I never had felt pretty, and I just wanted to be, and to me, pretty meant not fat. That's just all I wanted, was to just not be fat for once. And so I started really restricting calories. I discovered that lean cuisine meals, there was this one that was called chicken marsala, and I looked on the box and it had very few calories. And I thought, if I only ate one of those per day, I would have to be skinny. And so I would wake up in the mornings and drink a Carnation instant breakfast, and then go hungry all day, trying so hard to not eat anything until my little lean cuisine, and I would scarf it down. And of course I was still hungry, but I would make myself, and I was able in high school. And in a way, I'm so proud of myself, but also so sad for myself. I was able to lose down to a very normal weight. In fact, there are some pictures of me in high school where I think, my gosh, I actually look pretty good. And if I didn't remember what I felt like, I would have thought, good job. I was hungry. That's what I felt like, really hungry. And I had very bad moods. Like, I know high school is a moody time, and I did have some kind of rough things happen in high school, but I literally was losing my will to live. And knowing now what I know about nutrition, I had no fat in my body as far as what I was eating. I was malnourished. Of course I was depressed. So at some point, my super strong willpower and desire to be skinny, I lost that battle and I started eating again, because that's what humans do. We have to feed ourselves. The weight came back very quickly, and I was heavier than ever. And in college, I went away to live in a dorm, and I had a little food card. It was called our cat card, and you could just swipe. It was unlimited, Amber. This should not even be legal. I could eat. And there was a Chick-fil-A on campus. Nothing wrong with Chick-fil-A, but there were restaurants on campus, and you could get as much as you want because my parents had paid for this unlimited card. It was actually part of my scholarship. I gained 50 pounds. You know, we talk about the freshman 15, but it was more like 50 for me. And I was well over 200 pounds by the time I graduated. And I had been with my high school sweetheart, who I'm still married to after 18 years. But we have been together since we were both teenagers. He was not in college with me. He's 2 years younger. And I'm sure, looking back, I mean, every time I came home, I knew I was getting bigger and bigger, but I also was so committed to my studies that it had sort of taken a back burner. And so I was just so proud of my grades and wanting to start a career that by the time I got married, I was 23. I was a size 22, 24. And I continued to gain after that, and to the point that I was 262 pounds was the most that I saw. 262 as a woman, I knew at that point, that's a big number. And I felt so out of control that there was no doubt in my mind that I would eventually hit 300, because I was climbing that quickly. The health problems I was actually having during my was the worst as a newlywed. It was during those few years there where I'd graduated college at 22, and those first few years of marriage, I was getting repeated boils as staph infections. And it's the least sexy thing ever, but I was getting them on my backside and on my legs. And I would have to go get them lanced and packed with gauze, and they were getting cellulitis around them to the point where I was hobbling like an old lady, and I was 25 years old, 260 pounds, and I felt awful. So my doctor, I was back again, and he's a very old man. He's in his 80s now. He was probably in his 70s then. And he said, well, Miss Hogan, he's looking at my chart. I've been in so many times for the same issue. He said, I'll go ahead and tell you that we're just going to keep repeating this process until one of us dies. Well, I started crying, of course. I already was embarrassed. I had just had to bend over a table to have him once again cut my backside. It was a very low point that day. And I cried and I said, what can I do? He said, you need to lose at least 100 pounds. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, of course I need to lose 100 pounds. And I said, I've tried my whole life. I don't know how. And he said, honey, it's the carbohydrates. And I said, what's a carbohydrate? I'd heard of it, but I didn't know. And again, 25, and this is 15 years ago. So I had heard of Atkins, but I didn't really know what it was. Again, my mom, she had always had a perfect figure. She did not have to worry about diet at all. So I didn't hear about dieting from my mom. That was completely off of her radar. All right. So when he said that, he gave me a little pamphlet, and it was all about carbohydrates. And at that point, because I had really hit rock bottom, I listened. I read it. And on the way home, I called my dad and I said, Dad, I think I'm going to try doing low carb. And he said, well, that's good. And I said, oh my gosh, I just realized, are potatoes low carb? And he said, no, honey, they are not. And I was like, well, that's going to be hard. I really like potatoes. And he said, yeah, well, you can give it a shot. Well, I gave it a very solid shot. I lost about 30 pounds the first month. And I did very low carb for 5 years, cutting back more and more and more to the point where I was basically just eating meat. And that's when I thought, oh my gosh, can you just eat meat? So I did a Google search. Is it safe to only eat meat? Because that's how I was feeling best. I felt so much better that way. The only thing though was I was struggling because I was still pretty convinced that fat would make me fat. So I was doing very animal-based, but low fat. So I wasn't feeling this good. I was looking similar to this, but I wasn't feeling that good. Well, once I did the Google search and I found carnivores, I found my people. This was in 2009, October 2009. And I told them that day, I said, look, I'm basically carnivore already. And they said, and I shared some pictures. They were like, my gosh, that's amazing. Welcome to the tribe. And it was instant connection. But then they said, so what exactly do you eat? And I was telling them about all of this chicken breast. And they were like, okay, well, let's talk. Aren't you hungry? I said, well, yeah, I'm hungry. I'm on a diet, yo. Of course I'm hungry. And they said, you don't need to be hungry. And also I was exercising an hour of cardio every morning and an hour of cardio every evening. I was tired. And I was pushing myself more and more. And one of the reasons I started to Google things was I wasn't feeling great. And I wondered what I was doing wrong. And I thought maybe it's not safe to just eat meat. Well, then I found them. And it was hundreds of people who were total carnivores, who were not killing it at the gym every day. And they weren't tired. And they said, you need to eat fatty. Go get some beef. They said, right now, go get a steak and don't cut the fat off. Eat it and report back. It was like, oh, my eyes were open. It was the best tasting thing ever. And I felt like this cannot be what I'm supposed to be eating. It's too good. And I said, y'all eat this every day? And they're like, all day, every day. Go eat steak. You don't need to eat chicken breast. So that was sort of my transition from just doing it on my own to oh, now I'm carnivore. So when I say 2009, that's when I started eating fatty meat. I had already been sort of doing it on my own badly for a few years there. Well, at that point, I began to gain a little weight. I gained about 20 pounds for 6 months, because when you do this to your body and you starve yourself with skinless, boneless chicken breast and you're exercising 2 hours a day, I was malnourished. I maybe didn't look it. I was about this weight, but I was malnourished. And then you say, okay, body, now we're going to eat fatty steaks. And your body is like a hoarder. I felt like a hoarder. I could not get enough. I was eating 3 to 4 pounds of fatty meat per day, and I was legitimately hungry. I was not eating because I was bored. I was eating because I needed to eat. And I did that for about 6 months. And the entire 6 months, I was in a mental battle because I had fought so hard to lose every one of those pounds, and to see 20 of them come back, it felt like it's going to all come back. And every day I would step on the scale and I felt like it's going to all come back. It's all coming back. And that made me want to cry and scream and eat chicken breast again. And I would go and I would talk to my carnivore friends, and they were like, stop. Your body wouldn't be demanding this if you didn't need it. And they said, just try to stay calm, get some flowy clothes, take up a hobby, keep eating meat. We've seen this happen. You are not the first. Basically, you're not the first, young lady. So, okay. And I did. And about the 6 month mark, I didn't force myself to stop eating so much. I just found that 2 pounds of meat is enough. It was suddenly enough. I was just realizing I didn't need so much, and I didn't feel this hoarding crazy hunger. It was just more like, oh, okay, I ate a steak and now I feel good. I think those 6 months were important. And I don't think that if at the 1 month mark, if I had said, and now I'm going to eat 2 pounds of meat per day, I don't think I could have replicated that and skipped that process. I think my body needed it, and it was hard. And I see people go through it. Steak and butter gal Bella, she went through it when she started. She was starving. She ate. She gained. You have gone through it. People do it, and they feel like this isn't working. This isn't working. I'm gaining weight. And I try to tell them, you're not going to end up morbidly obese eating steaks. You're not. You are going to eventually, you're going to feed yourself. You're not going to always probably need 3 to 4 pounds of meat per day. You're going to eventually get in tune with real hunger. You're going to eventually be fed. You're going to be able to fuel yourself on a proper amount of food. And I think that was proper for me at that time. I think I was just listening to my body. Now I can listen to my body, and some days I only need 1.5 pounds of meat, and I'm perfectly satisfied. I'm still listening to my body. But man, that was a really long answer. But where I am now, so fasting insulin is 2.8. I'm very insulin sensitive now. I don't know. I didn't know I was insulin sensitive until I had this test done. And now today I can say 2.8. I knew I was feeling great. I have not struggled with weight anymore. My cycles are regular. Before starting the fatty meat part, when I was just doing my own version, I did not menstruate for 2 years. I knew something was wrong, but I kind of didn't care because I was skinny. But now I'm regular clockwork. It is painless. I always had very, very painful cramps, and I don't anymore. I have 3 children now. I used to be on acne meds. Now, y'all know on Instagram, anybody watching this, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, most everybody, including myself, is using a filter on Instagram. We just do. But when you're on a Zoom call, this is real, right? You're not filtering on a Zoom call. And I've got my halo light here. And I used to be on acne medicine, Accutane, and that is an ugly, painful medicine to be on. It is rather dangerous, actually. But my skin is clear now. I sleep like the dead at night. I feel good. And to know that at age 25, I was hobbling around with boils, and I haven't had a single one since the talk that day with that doctor. Even during that 5 years of doing crappy carnivore, I still didn't have boils. Inflammation is at 0.5. I have had a CAC test done, which measures the calcium actually in your chest. a scan done and it came back a perfect 0. So I try very, very hard to keep carnivore very simple. For me, it needs to be cheap. I'm a teacher. I'm not an elitist. I'm living a real life with real kids in a neighborhood. It's got to be doable. And I like just trying to share with people that it can be done even in the long term. I know 11 years isn't decades, but give me decades and I'll be giving the same speech. I'm sure of it.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Kelly. I feel like I need to jump up and go, hallelujah.
I'll jump with you.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you implemented the diet. What did you, what was a typical day like? And do you include things like spices, dairy, coffee, anything you want to talk about? And did you have any transitional issues?
Okay, so the weight gain was a transitional issue, but it was the only one for me. Because I had reduced so slowly over 5 years, it was by that point a very small, the change was adding more fat. So I was already eating just animals. The other change though was I was still eating things on my version that were had carbs, 0, like Diet Coke. So I was drinking artificial sweeteners and eating sugar-free Jell-O, which is now I cannot imagine considering that was carnivore. But all I knew was don't eat carbs, right? So until I found my people, and then in 2009 they were like, "Oh yeah, that's got to go too. That's keeping you addicted to the taste of sweet." And I was like, "But it doesn't have sugar." They said, "No, the taste of sweet is causing you to crave that more and more. If you want to be free from that, just cut it out." And sure as the world, it did. So I really didn't have, it's not like I had keto flu. I didn't have a keto rash, but I was almost there anyway. The weight gain was really my only issue. What did I eat in the beginning? So for those 6 months, it was almost all fatty steaks or just straight up fat. I would go to the butcher and just say, "Do you have any fat trimmings?" And he would just give it to me for free. I would come home and just fix it in the skillet. I wanted it so badly. Thinking about that, it's kind of amazing. I only gained 20 pounds, really. I was just eating massive amounts of fat and steak. And I was somehow shocked going from super restrictive that I've gained a pound a day or something, for 6 months. But really, it was a huge change from what I was doing before with the chicken breast to then just eating a skillet full of straight up fat. But it was delicious. That's not how I eat anymore. Over the years, and also for that 6 months, I used no seasonings at all. None. Not a shake of salt. No pepper. I was not eating McDonald's burger patties then. I was just cooking up tons of fatty steak. That's how most of the carnivores did it back then. And I was just sort of falling in line with them. And I kept that up. Obviously, at the 6 month mark, I told you I cut back some because I was not as hungry, to more like 2 pounds of meat per day. But I was still mostly doing it that way. Over the years, I have had more children and I have become more lazy in terms of what I eat. I definitely go through the drive-through for McDonald's burger patties a lot. And I get asked all the time, "Oh my gosh, but what about the vegetable oils?" Well, they don't use them on the meat. They don't. That's for the fries. And you can look it up. You'll find it. They do not use any oils to cook their meats. It is only meat, salt, and pepper. And they will even leave off the salt and pepper if you ask. It's just 100% beef. And sometimes people ask, "How do you get your organ meats?" And I either say, "I don't know, I don't." Or I say, "Heavens, it's a burger patty. It's probably all chucked in there. Who knows what I'm getting? I might have had eyeball this morning. I don't know." I have no idea. And nor do I care. All I know is I eat them. I feel good. I have no reactions from it, and it's easy and it's cheap. At my McDonald's, I get 1 pound of beef for $4 and it's cooked. People say, "Why McDonald's? Now, why not Wendy's?" Well, where I live, it's about twice that much at Wendy's. Otherwise, they're delicious. I get them sometimes. I honestly don't care where the beef came from as long as it's beef. Now, that said, I watched Sacred Cow recently. So basically, I'm an expert now on regenerative farming, is what I'm saying. But it made me think a little bit about it, and I have bought some local cow. I honestly prefer the taste Just throw more, the issue of how cows are treated. I just prefer the taste of grain finished meat myself. As far as how a cow is treated, I love cows. If I can find a pampered cow at a decent price that was also fattened up with some grain right before it passed away, that would be perfect. I don't have a vendetta against cows, and I'm certainly not into animal cruelty or abusing the earth, but I also know that there are a lot of us who just need meat. People in my Walmart who are poor and on those little scooters and they've got diabetes, they don't necessarily need to go spend more to get grass finished. They just need to cut out carbs and get some meat in their diets. So I am trying to be more open-minded to the idea of being a responsible carnivore, but I don't want to ever do it to the point where I convince someone who can't afford grass-finished beef to not try. Because I think that would be throwing our babies out with the bathwater. It's just more important to me that people eat meat, whatever they can afford, that tastes good and that makes them feel awesome. And for me, a simple burger patty qualifies all of those things. So most days I now eat 1.5 to 2 pounds of meat per day. I would say at least a pound of that every day is just burger patties, whether they're frozen that I fix, 100% beef, or drive through 100% beef. It's just beef. And then some days we'll grill up a steak. I just recently got an Auto Wild, so now it's very easy. But we already had a Weber, so I just throw a steak out on the Weber or in a skillet. I don't do a lot of complicated meals because I'm busy and I don't like to cook and I'm terrible at it, honestly. So yeah, I like it to be very simple, cheap, and easy. And I've basically forgotten what the question was at that point. Did that answer it?
Pretty close. If you want to just real quick go for you pretty much said what you do eat. So I'm assuming that you do not consume coffee, dairy.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked by my own head. I do still drink coffee, actually. I do. And people say, well, it's a plant. And I say, no, it's not. Coffee beans are a plant. Coffee is the water that touched the plant. So check yourself. It is coffee bean water, and the water did touch a plant. And here's how I feel about coffee. I find it to be delicious. I have done carnivore literally years without it, mostly because I was pregnant or breastfeeding for an extremely long amount of time with all of these children. And so I cut out coffee a long time. I know what it's like to do coffee or carnivore without coffee, and I know what it's like with it. And I know that I like the taste of coffee, and I couldn't tell any major benefits one way or the other myself, except that I feel like I live a little and I drink my coffee in the mornings. If people can tell a difference, I do think it's worth trying both ways, especially if you're having any issues. I typically say, okay, are you eating a lot of dairy and are you drinking a lot of coffee? And if either of those two things are yes, then I say, I think it's worth trying it without. If you're having no issues and you love coffee and dairy, my gosh, enjoy, lucky you. That's wonderful. I am one of those people where I can handle coffee with a little bit of heavy cream in the mornings, and I have nothing that I'm wanting to fix. If I were struggling with anything, I would tell myself, it's got to go. I got to cut it out. In regards to dairy, I will say that in my state, I cannot just go to the store and buy raw dairy, because those raw dairy people, they will always say, why aren't you eating raw dairy? They're very forceful, some of them, and I can't just go pick it up. I have tried some Bunker Hill raw cheese before. It was delicious. I did not find that it messed with my skin that much, but in general, most pasteurized processed dairy, if I eat much of it, I, number one, want more. I crave it. If it's in my system, I want more. It's never enough. It gives me a stuffy nose and I get acne. It's not worth it to me to eat a lot, but I don't find that I don't think butter does that. I know it doesn't. I don't get any of those symptoms from just Kerrygold. And I very much enjoy butter. I don't consider that it doesn't function the same as regular dairy for me. I don't know what they do to cheese that makes it like crack, but whatever they're putting in processed cheese, it is very addictive to me, so I have to watch it. Butter is so weird. If I am needing fat, I can taste some Kerrygold and it is like, oh my gosh, it melts in my mouth and is so delicious. If I am not craving fat and I try some butter, it is almost revolting. And it's the same exact stick of butter. It doesn't matter. It's like my body either needs the fat or it doesn't. And I don't think I was probably that good of a judge of that at first, but by this stage in the game, I really do know if I need fat or not. Cheese, on the other hand, I don't care if my body needs cheese or not. I'm going to want cheese. It tastes good. You can wake me up in the dead of the night and be like, Hogan, you want some cheese? Yes. Give me the cheese. I don't know why it has that effect on me, but butter, it just, I could take it or leave it just depending on what I'm actually needing. So yes, a little bit of dairy, plenty of butter, coffee, spices. I'm fine with spices. I go through periods with salt. I have kind of a weird relationship with salt. Salt can be a little addicting to me too. When I start using it, then I want more. And when I cut back, then I need less. I'm not sure what that is. I've talked some with some pretty knowledgeable people, and some of those knowledgeable people will say, oh my gosh, salt is life. You must have it. You'll die without it. And some knowledgeable people will say, actually, lots of people do better without any salt. And I have, in fact, found many living, breathing carnivores who would agree with both of those people. I have personally tried it both ways. I have done, like I said, the first several months of carnivore, I did not touch salt, and I felt very good. And then I've done periods of carnivore where I dumped salt. Oh my gosh, all of the salts. But I will say that the more I used, the more I wanted. And I don't know that that's a good thing. I think there might be a balance there. And I for sure know people who said that their leg cramps would not clear up until they eliminated it completely. That is a thing for some people. But I can sort of take it or leave it. So that's what I eat most days. I do find with even a little bit of garlic salt or garlic powder, I'm not really sensitive. I don't have histamine issues that I know of. So I can be a little bit lenient. When my father-in-law smokes meat for us, he's pretty heavy with seasonings, not sauces. I wouldn't do anything sweet, but he likes to season meat, and that's fine with me.
That's awesome. That sounds very similar to what I do. And the coffee, oh my goodness, that is a trigger subject and it cracks me up. So it's dairy. I found that out. I like to put some information out there, and some for the good, some for the bad, because like you said, even with the salt, there's, different sides, and those are trigger subjects. So that's very interesting. Okay. Last question. And you kind of answered it a little bit, but this is about what improvements did you notice after you had been doing meat-based for a while? Go back through quick, as much as you want to go over it, what the improvements were. And was there anything that kind of shocked you that you weren't expecting?
Well, it's sort of the improvements I saw when I first cut out carbs and tried it my way versus the improvements I saw when then I added the fat and really did it the real carnivore way. So, the main thing for me was I stopped getting the boils. Oh, there is one health issue that I have hardly ever mentioned to people, and I haven't even said it today, that I was struggling with. So we all have a sternum, and our ribs connect to the sternum with cartilage here. And that cartilage, when you have inflammation in your body, and that, of course, we know is what was causing all of those boils for me, and the acne and my issues, hormones out of balance, and inflammation. So what my doctor did actually tell me that day, your body is inflamed, and that's what the carbohydrates are doing to you. They're keeping you inflamed. And that was the first time I'd ever heard it. And now, of course, I know he was dead on. But that inflammation had gotten into the cartilage that connects my ribs to my chest, and that's called costochondritis. And I had multiple flare-ups of costochondritis that were so intense that the first one I had to be rushed to the emergency room because I was pretty sure I was dying of a heart attack. And I actually do know an older lady who has had both episodes of costochondritis and an actual heart attack, and she says she cannot tell the difference. It was awful. And I would sometimes lay there all you could really do for it was take large doses of anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen and wait while you can barely breathe, because breathing makes you feel like your chest is going to explode. And I have never had another episode of that since cutting out carbs. It's just inflammation. No more boils, no more cellulitis. I'm not going to say no more acne, because I feel like it's very normal to occasionally get a blemish. But as far as patches of acne or needing medications for acne, I think I have fairly normal skin now. I do tell people I absolutely do still have pores, because I'm a human. And I think with filters these days, we've come to think that a skin pore is a problem, when in fact, I do have pores on my skin. I think in a room full of people, I have fairly normal skin, but as somebody who used to struggle, I am thrilled to have normal skin. That's a blessing. Regular cycles. And I did, even for most of my life, even as a very young person, struggle with nighttime leg cramps. My dad has had nighttime leg cramps for a very long time. My grandpa on my mom's side, so it's now both sides of my family, he struggled with them his whole life also. So I don't know if there's a genetic factor, but if it is, I'm pretty sure I got it on both sides. So I definitely did struggle with them, even at times on Carnivore. Now, this is a really recent thing, Amber. My dad had to get a CPAP machine because he was having awful headaches. My dad is not a carnivore, but he does watch his sugar. He is no longer a huge guy. He's gotten his weight under control, but he was having awful headaches, and they said we should try a CPAP machine. He got one, and his headaches went away, but also his leg cramps stopped. Now, this was like lifetime leg cramps. So what that said to me was, okay, oxygen, apparently something about oxygen is playing a part. Well, I didn't go sign up for a CPAP machine because I don't want one, but I got to reading about mouth taping. Have you done much mouth taping reading? I had not done much reading about it, and I still haven't like gone out and bought bunches of books, but I have just done, some Google searches. And I talked to quite a few people who had recommended it to me. And I don't have to do it every night now, because your body very quickly gets trained. But to train yourself, my husband was telling me that I was laying there asleep at night with my mouth open. He said, you sleep mouth open. I was like, no, I don't. He's like, oh, yes, you do. And he says, and you're loud too. I said, do I snore? And he's like, yes, you definitely snore. Well, I don't even have tonsils, not since age 8. I don't have adenoids. I thought he was lying, but he's not a liar, so I know he has to be telling the truth. And he said that I also would startle awake a lot. He said repeatedly, he says, you jump so big that you wake me up. Well, this is recent, Amber. I said, I looked up sleep apnea. I'm like, most people with sleep apnea are beasts. They're smokers. They've got health problems. And I said, but I feel like I'm sleeping well, except for an occasional leg cramp. He said, well, I'm glad you feel like you are, but you're not. So just recently, I started doing the mouth taping thing. Huge difference. I have stopped having the leg cramps. He says I am very quiet now, and I know what you're thinking. It's because my mouth is taped, but he also has suggested it for daytime use. Something to think about, I guess. But anyway, he says that my sleep is quiet. I am waking up feeling better. So I think that for a long time, I assumed that the leg cramps were possibly genetic. My husband assumed they were diet related, because he would always joke and say, would you just eat a banana? And I said, I used to eat bananas and I still had leg cramps. Bananas way prior to carnivore, I ate fruit and I still had leg cramps. So I knew that wasn't the solution, but I guess a part of me thought maybe I'm missing something. Why do I still occasionally get them? It wasn't every night, but I think that maybe for some people, oxygen, just their breathing, can play a part. So I've started to be very conscious about breathing. And I will also say that wearing a mask, this is not a pro or anti-mask comment, but it's a fact that at my job, I have to wear a mask 8 hours a day at this point. And I have started to shift the way I hold my mouth when I wear a mask. I don't know why. It's happened. And I went from being a nose breather to being I hold my jaw. Now, nobody would see this, but under my mask, I hold my jaw differently than I normally would. And I'm just trying to breathe. And I think that shift has turned me into a mouth breather. And the more I read, the more I realize that's not as healthy for us. And our oxygen levels suffer. And I've heard that even our dental health can suffer because we are intended to breathe through our noses. So sometimes I guess I've been guilty too of thinking it's all food related. And for the most part, I think it is actually. But in this case, I think changing the way that I sleep is helping with cramps, and I'm not having those anymore. And I currently have 0 things that I'm trying to fix. There are times where you feel like, I wish I could just tweak my energy, or I wish I could tweak my brain fog. I've gone through phases where I have tweaked with fat levels to try to tweak something. But as of right now, I've got nothing that I'm trying to fix. I feel really happy and good and healthy, and all of my tests are confirming all of that. So I did try some organ meats recently, and I got asked if I was doing that because I was having a problem. And no, absolutely not. I was more just curious because I had not tried them, and I kept getting asked, why don't you eat organs? So I did. And I did not reach like next level euphoria or anything. They were kind of tasty, and then I overdid it, and I had like itchy eyes and scratchy throat, so I backed off some. But I'm open to trying new things, but at this stage of the game, I'm not trying to fix anything. I just feel really thankful, and I just try to share my experiences, and some people might have to do things a little differently than I do, and I am perfectly okay with that as long as it's helping them to thrive. If they're feeling good and getting good results, I am thrilled. I would even say I have a vegetarian friend, and she is currently feeling so great eating the way that she is eating. I am not out preaching and proselytizing to her every day that she needs to change what she's doing. If she were to ever start feeling bad, then I hope she's at least open to the idea of having more animal products in her diet. But in general, if somebody is feeling great and they are happy with their life and their health, then there's nothing more that I could want. I don't need anyone to do it my way, but I do think it's important for us to each share what's working for us, just to relay that to other people.
I could not agree more. That is dead on. That's my exact same belief. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. I think it's so important.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate the chance to come on and talk. I have guests on quite a bit, and the entire time they're on, I try to tell myself, don't do all the talking, because I clearly really do enjoy talking. But this is one of those times where you've asked me to talk, and man, that was really fun. So thank you.
I could not love you more. Seriously. You're awesome. Again, thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Amber. Bye-bye.
Bye.